Star Trek Generations confusing timeline explained. Star Trek Generations takes place across two eras of Star Trek, and the film's timeline of events can be confusing. Star Trek Generations was the debut feature film starring the cast of Star Trek: The Next Generation. To make Star Trek Generations a must-see milestone, the film featured appearances by cast members of Star Trek, the original series, and featured the historic team-up of Captain James T. Kirk, William Shatner, and Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart, culminating in Kirk's death. Star Trek Generations' plot device allowing the 23rd century's Captain Kirk to travel to the future and meet the 24th century's Captain Picard was the Nexus, an intergalactic space ribbon where time has no meaning. The Nexus is a means to an end, and its abilities are left ill-defined. The energy ribbon's main purpose is to get Kirk and Picard together, and the Nexus was never seen again after Star Trek Generations. However, to sort out Star Trek Generations' timeline, it's best to start with two fixed dates: 2293, which is when the film's prologue is set, and 2371, when Star Trek Generations' main story happens. Captain Kirk time traveled 78 years thanks to Star Trek Generations' Nexus. Star Trek Generations begins in 2293 with Captain Kirk's apparent death. Star Trek Generations is set later in the same year as Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. Kirk's USS Enterprise A has been decommissioned, and he attends the launch of the USS Enterprise B, led by its new captain, John Harriman, Alan Ruck. The Enterprise B's maiden flight becomes a rescue mission when two El-Orien transport ships are trapped by the Nexus. Kirk is presumed killed in action when the Nexus smashes through the Enterprise's hull. When he was swept into the Nexus, Captain Kirk found himself at a recreation of his Idaho home. Kirk had only just arrived when he is joined by Captain Jean-Luc Picard, who entered the Nexus in 2371. Because the Nexus is a dimension where time and space have no meaning, Kirk and Picard's meeting happens outside of linear time. But Picard convinces Kirk to come with him to 2371 to stop Dr. Tolian Saran, Malcolm McDowell, minutes before he destroys the Viridian Star. Together, the two captains of the Enterprise defeat Saran, but Kirk is mortally injured. Kirk's official death happens in 2371. Dr. Tolian Saran had no compunction about destroying the entire Viridian star system to achieve his goal of returning to the Nexus. But when was he in the space ribbon to begin with? Saran's destiny is tied to Captain Kirk and the USS Enterprise B's mission in 2293. Saran was one of the El-Orien refugees aboard the transport ship trapped by the Nexus. Saran and the other passengers' quantum signatures fluctuated according to the Enterprise's sensors. This is when Saran entered the Nexus, and he was pulled from it just as quickly when the Enterprise beamed 47 El-Orien survivors aboard. Star Trek Generations did not reveal how long Dr. Saran was in the Nexus by his reckoning, although it was only moments for the crew of the Enterprise B who were trying to save the El-Oriens. But Saran must have been in the Nexus long enough to become obsessed with returning. Dr. Saran spent the next 78 years devising a way to alter the Nexus's course through space, determining Viridian 3 as his entry point in 2371. Saran is an El-Orien, so he is extremely long-lived, but 78 years of being separated from the Nexus left him desperate and genocidal. Star Trek Generations is a pivotal film in the Star Trek franchise, notable for bringing together two beloved Starfleet captains, James T. Kirk and Jean-Luc Picard, in a single story. Released in 1994, the film aimed to bridge the gap between the original series, TOS, and the Next Generation, TNG. However, the film's use of time travel, the mysterious Nexus, and the way it blends timelines has left many fans confused. Let's unravel the complex web of events that make up Star Trek Generations' timeline. The Nexus, a timeless phenomenon. At the heart of the confusion is the Nexus, a strange energy ribbon that plays a central role in the film's plot. The Nexus is described as a place where time has no meaning, and those within it can experience anything they desire. This lack of temporal rules is crucial to the plot, but also adds to the timeline's complexity. The film opens in the year 2293 with Captain Kirk, played by William Shatner, aboard the USS Enterprise B, The ship, commanded by Captain John Harriman, Alan Ruck, responds to a distress signal from two El-Orient ships trapped in the Nexus. During the rescue attempt, part of the Nexus energy ribbon strikes the Enterprise, and Captain Kirk is seemingly killed while saving the ship. However, he is not truly dead. Instead, he has been pulled into the Nexus. The jump to the 24th century. The next major time period in Star Trek Generations takes place in the year 2371, 78 years after Kirk's presumed death. This is where the crew of the USS Enterprise D, led by Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart, comes into play. Picard is dealing with personal struggles following the death of his brother and nephew, but these events soon take a back seat when the Enterprise D becomes involved in a mission to stop a madman, Dr. Tolian Saran, played by Malcolm McDowell. Saran, a survivor of the El-Orient ships that encountered the Nexus in 2293, has spent decades attempting to return to the Nexus. His desire to re-enter the Nexus drives him to dangerous lengths, including destroying stars to alter the course of the energy ribbon so that it will intersect with a planet where he can re-enter it. Picard and the crew discover Saran's plan and attempt to stop him, but the timeline starts to unravel as Saran's actions come into play. The Nexus's temporal loophole. The Nexus itself is the key to understanding the confusing timeline. Inside the Nexus, time doesn't work in a linear fashion. People can experience any point in time, which leads to some strange consequences. After Saran launches a missile that destroys a star, causing a shockwave that obliterates the planet Picard is on, Picard is pulled into the Nexus. Once inside the Nexus, Picard finds himself in an idyllic setting with his ideal family, though he soon realizes that this is merely an illusion. With the help of Guinan Whoopi Goldberg, another El-Orient survivor who had previously been in the Nexus, Picard learns that he can exit the Nexus at any point in time and place he chooses. This is a key aspect of the Nexus's confusing nature. It's not bound by the usual rules of time. Guinan's presence also adds a layer of mystery, as a version of her remains in the Nexus, even though she is physically outside of it in the 24th century. Picard chooses to leave the Nexus to stop Saran before he can launch the missile. Crucially, he doesn't do this alone. Picard convinces Captain Kirk, still living inside the Nexus, to join him in this mission. This means that Kirk, who has been presumed dead for decades, is brought into the 24th century. The pair exits the Nexus and returns to a point just before Saran's missile is fired, giving them a chance to prevent the disaster. Breaking the timeline rules. Here is where the timeline gets even more complex. The idea that Picard and Kirk can exit the Nexus at any point in time, effectively traveling to a past event to alter it, seems to violate the established rules of time travel in the Star Trek universe. Previous episodes of TNG and TOS had explored time travel with strict consequences. Changing the past was usually portrayed as dangerous and something to be avoided, yet in Generations, Picard and Kirk's actions don't seem to have any lasting impact on the broader timeline. The fact that Picard and Kirk are able to re-enter a timeline before Saran fires the missile suggests that the Nexus is an exception to Star Trek's usual time travel rules. The Nexus is not just a conduit for time travel, it's a place where time and reality are flexible. Once inside, people can exit at any moment, and that moment can be in the past or the future, making it a unique and confusing element of the Star Trek universe. The death of Kirk and the conclusion. In the final act of Generations, Kirk sacrifices himself in a physical fight with Saran, allowing Picard to destroy the missile and save millions of lives. Kirk's death in 2371 is the one event that remains fixed, even though time has been manipulated. His death marks the end of an era for Star Trek, as it closes the book on the original Enterprise captain while passing the torch to Picard. Conclusion. Star Trek Generations weaves a complicated narrative involving multiple timelines, time travel, and the timeless Nexus. The film's timeline is often